Hey everyone, come to Daddy.
Sam. Hi, we're here. The best.
There's room for all of you. Let's make something amazing.
Can't wait to build with you, Sam. We love what you're doing here.
Thanks for showing up. OpenAI loves your attention, and we plan to earn it. Stick around. We've got a lot to share.
Hello, everybody. It's Sunday, October the 12th. We haven't done a That Was the Week tech roundup for a couple of weeks. I was in Europe last week. And over the last couple of weeks, most of the news has been once again about OpenAI and Sam Altman. They took a stake in AMD, which resulted in AMD stocks skyrocketing 23%. Sam Altman is beginning to talk about something called building an AI empire. And even more conservative observers like the Financial Times have concluded that Sam Altman has a new project, Building AI Inc. I guess the question is whether that really is the case, what it looks like, and whether it is the ultimate bubble or something real in the economic future. Keith is calling it Come to Daddy. OpenAI wants your attention. And once again, Keith, Sam Altman is dominating the news cycle. Is this good or bad for Sam Altman and OpenAI? Do you think he's taking our attention off the ball, or is a lot of this stuff for real?
No, it's definitely for real. They had their developer day this week. They actually had the developer day on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, I attended Andreessen Horowitz's speedrun event, which is when they launched 58 new startups. Every single startup was an AI company, and I would guess that more than half of them no longer had a business due to what OpenAI announced the day before. So OpenAI is from the point of view of a startup, it's sucking the air out of the room, and the space to innovate outside of OpenAI is shrinking, and the space to innovate inside of it is growing. And that's a factor of three things. They launched a developer platform for agents to be created, which competes with Lovable and N8N and the other Vercel companies like that. Then secondly, they announced apps could run inside of an OpenAI chat session. So you could book an airline ticket using Expedia from inside an OpenAI chat. And then thirdly, they announced Sora, which is the now very good video app. I made a video of myself as a Manchester United captain.
Yeah, it's as close you're going to get, Keith, to both you as a captain of Manchester United and Manchester United winning anything. I mean, in a way, this isn't very new. Zuckerberg tried it with Facebook. Google, in many ways, pulled it off. It's not really good news for innovation or the startup economy, isn't it? That a single company is trying to be the entire innovation economy and be the platform or the play that defines everything else.
Well, I think there's three examples of when it was good. The first is Google becoming effectively the interface to the internet due to how good its search used to be.
Well, it was good for Google. It wasn't always good for everyone else, though, was it?
I think it initially was very good for everyone else. I don't know if you remember when Google came out and it was so much better than Alta Vista. We all.
But that's different. I mean, the Google search engine is fantastic. That goes without saying. But the fact that Google increasingly controlled the entire economy, the advertising economy, the content economy is. I mean, I've written extensively on this. Certainly wasn't good for everyone. It was good for Google.
Yeah. Well, in my brain, I tend to separate the economic consequences from the technical and human consequences. And so I don't disagree with you, but I'm trying to focus in on just how much better the internet became. And the level of abstraction I think at is the canvas on which we all enter the internet changed to Google. And it happened twice more. It happened when the iPhone came out. The canvas changed to the iPhone and still is to a large degree, and then was joined by Android. That was arguably a good thing for all of us, even though it was also economically beneficial to Apple and to Google. And I think this third thing is an equally, if not more, momentous canvas change, where our engagement with AI is largely, it's over 88% of all AI use in the world is happening through OpenAI. The numbers came out last week. And you know,
hold on. So I don't know if you had a piece on this. 88% of all AI interactions are through OpenAI. So you're suggesting that the rest, the other 12, the other 12% are Anthropic, Google, XAI.
Yeah.
I find that hard to believe. Where are those numbers from?
You know, Andrew, I'll have to.
I got you with your pants down, Keith. I don't believe that.
No. I read a lot, and I can't. I'll put.
But it's not in the context. You can't be throwing around those kind of numbers. I mean that.
Wait.
Go on.
Let's talk about the substance. I'll publish the piece next week.
But that is a very, very important point. Whether that's for real, because if it is, then it's game over. Then you are indeed your rather dramatic editorial, Keith, about coming to daddy. We've all gone to daddy. Sam Altman is indeed our new father.
Yeah, and you know, the other numbers were kind of staggering. Anthropic was second in the like, you know, I think it was like 8%. Google was under 3%. So
find the let's not speculate. Find that piece. Maybe
I'll find the piece, but
find the piece for next week, because that's an important piece. But anyway, let's say you're right. Let's speculate that 88% of all AI activity now, from the consumer point of view, is coming through OpenAI. What's your point then in come to daddy? What about, I mean, aren't we in a post-attention economy anyway? Attention has increasingly become a bit of an old-fashioned word too.
88.16%. I found it. It's in SQ magazine.
Okay, well, you continue talking. I'm going to flash it up. I'm going to look for it myself.
I'll send you the link in text, and you can click on it.
I wonder who publishes SQ magazine, whether it's a certain Sam Altman.
Yeah, exactly. But back to our original conversation. I tend to think that single winner has two benefits: one to the owner of the tech, and the other to the human race.
Well, let's leave the human race out of it, because that's an absurd abstraction, especially on a Sunday morning. Let's just talk more concretely.
I kind of like the abstraction.
Yeah, well, I don't want to talk about the human race.
I'm a Hegelian, Andrew.
Yeah, I know, and that's boring too. Let's talk more concretely.
So so this week was I hesitate to use the word tipping point, because almost every week's
a tipping point.
But it definitely reinforced the trend towards OpenAI sucking the air out of the room, and Altman has been on a press tour ever since.
Yeah.
And you know, has been talking about the.
And I did find it, SQ magazine, OpenAI statistics for 2025, but these are OpenAI statistics, so maybe they are cooking the numbers, so to speak. But maybe we'll come back to that next week. Go on.
So he's been doing the rounds, you know, stratechery and
yeah, that's what he does. Sam Altman does the rounds. I mean, he's a masterful marketer.
Yeah, and there's nothing he says that appears outlandish, as far as I can see. I mean, it still is an LLM. So what is the downside here? It's still an LLM. It still gets things wrong. You have to have a human in the loop. So, you know, the ratio of humans to AI is going to grow in AI's favor, and that's going to have an impact on two things: gross domestic product in every country of the world, I would imagine, and also the working week, which I assume on average is going to.
Okay, but let's just deal with OpenAI, because the abstractions are, I'm not sure how valuable they are. We did your interview, or our interview of the week is with the author of an interesting book, a new book, Sangeet Paul Chaudhary, Reshuffle: Who Wins When AI Restacks the Knowledge Economy. Chowdhury, who's based in Dubai, Chowdhury is what he calls a platform economist, and his argument is that AI hype is a feature, not a bug. And he's basically making the argument that Altman is spinning the world to take our mind off the fact that it's still struggling to establish itself as a coherent business. You and I have talked about this, and more people are concerned. I mean, lots and lots of pieces this week about how this current AI boom is going to end. So that's a real issue, Keith, isn't it?
I think it's a real issue, but I think there's a little bit of grasping at the straw you most want to grasp. So as you look at the whole through a certain biased prism, the one this week is all the money changing hands between NVIDIA and OpenAI and AMD.
Right, it's like one of those street players where you have those three things and the thing is moving so fast we're not sure where the money is. Is it with Oracle? Is it with AMD? Is it with Intel? Or is the guy who's playing the tricks on us on the street, is it Sam Altman? And we have no idea where the real money is.
To me, it veers into the world of conspiracy theories, which of course are very popular. In the absence of knowledge, everyone grasps onto a conspiracy.
It's not a conspiracy theory to be concerned about these billions of dollars changing hands, and still no one is quite clear about what it means, who's playing what game, and what the actual outcome is. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to be concerned with that.
Well, I think we can help there. We can help those people by just stating a few truths. I mean, the first is for this AI to be fully distributed worldwide and be capable of serving even the poorest individual with the highest quality of access to knowledge is going to require a massive amount of electricity, a massive amount of data centers, a massive amount of chips in the data centers, and running 24/7, and then improving over time at the software level. And that leads to a problem which all the players have, and it is a problem, not a solution. The problem is, how do you fund it? And most of the activity we've seen this week is an initial answer to the question, how do you fund it?
Right, that's a good point. You probably should have, not that I want to give you editorial suggestions, Keith, but the Come to Daddy might get you some clicks, but maybe how do you fund it? It would have been a better title. I like that.
Yeah, how do you fund it? And now the 100 billion that NVIDIA is putting into OpenAI is not a big enough answer. Much more money than that is required. Neither is the purchase by OpenAI of 6 gigawatts of chips from AMD that in return they're getting warrants to ultimately have the possibility of owning 10% of AMD. But bringing AMD into play is kind of interesting, because up until now it was an NVIDIA world. Well, now it's an AMD and NVIDIA world,
which is good. I mean, and I think you and I would agree on that. I mean, it's better to have two, even if they're two dominant players, better to have two dominant players than just one.
And then Oracle's role here, which is the 500 billion Stargate project, is not a big enough answer. They claim that what they're going to need is roughly 10 gigawatts of power at the base, with the chips that align with that and the data centers that the chips will go in annually for the next 10 years. And so you're getting into the trillions of dollars of cost for the human race to have AI.
Well, can we stop using this phrase "human race"? I don't even know what that means. Let's just
all
talk
of us,
about
all of us,
Silicon Valley. I mean, not all of us can have access.
Well,
some of us don't want it.
Well, just pick the kid in East Palo Alto who usually wouldn't have access.
Yeah, I'm not interested in kids in East Palo Alto. Let's talk about.
Yes, you are.
I'm not.
You're not such a monster.
I am an extreme monster. But I'm tired of this narrative where all this technology is going to help poor kids in East Palo Alto. Google didn't. Facebook didn't.
Google did, actually.
Well, anyway, so coming back to Sangeet, I thought it was really interesting because I have two thoughts on what you're saying. Firstly, what Sangeet Chadari argued was that there are alternative models to this sort of free market circus that's happening in America. There's an Indian model, and of course there's the Chinese model, which is more and more controlled. And he's based in Dubai. He hinted at a Gulf model. So that's the first thought. The second thought is you talk about these trillions in terms of producing energy and all the rest of it. But won't this, Keith, I mean, and this has always been your argument, I mean, whatever it cost a trillion yesterday will cost, I don't know, 100 billion next week. So won't all the costs come down? A lot of this become much more accessible and realistic in the longer term?
I think logically you would say that is likely to happen. For example, if it turns out that nuclear fusion is real, the cost of energy would come down.
Right.
But if it doesn't, then the cost of energy is pretty much going to stay the same or even go up as demand rises and supply is in short.
Or solar. I mean, I've done a number of shows recently on the solar revolution, the wind revolution. I mean, that can play a role as well.
It can, but it's expensive, actually. It turns out to be not much cheaper. So whereas fusion would, even nuclear fission is cheaper over the long run. Let's assume that, yes, it will come down. But it might not. And no one's going to make bets today on a guarantee of it coming down. So their bets today have to be based on today's reality because they're spending this money over the next 2 to 3 years.
So in a way, this contradicts a lot of the, shall we say, the positive technological thinking about costs coming down. If the price of energy is going to go up, if anything, then none of these issues are going to go away.
I think that would be true. So there's a lot of bets going into lowering energy costs, which is really the same as decentralizing energy, using nuclear capabilities, also using the sun plus batteries, decentralizing so the grid is not the source of a lot of energy.
Right.
There's a lot of trends in that direction, and those are real. But they're not that much cheaper yet.
And it's really interesting that the energy debate and, of course, also the environmental debate now are coming together. I mean, they're not just in parallel. What about the idea, your startup of the week is Reflection AI, the TechCrunch headline for Reflection AI raising $2 billion to be America's open frontier AI lab, challenging DeepSeek. DeepSeek, of course, being the Chinese model. Wasn't the promise of DeepSeek to bring all the costs down of AI? We don't hear that narrative anymore.
We still do hear that narrative, but there's a counter narrative. So the cost of training, which is really the DeepSeek innovation, is much cheaper if you adopt their method, which is reinforcement learning, as it's known. In other words, you don't have to build a big model yourself. You can use existing models and then use reinforcement learning to improve them. And that is a lot cheaper, that's true, and needs less energy. However, the counter narrative is that increasingly AI use involves multiple agents within a single interface, doing reasoning in quotes, and that is using a lot more tokens than the early AIs used. And tokens are the unit of energy consumption. If you think of a token as the unit of energy consumption, the number of tokens is going up. Google just announced.
Yeah, you had in one of your pieces, there's some stuff on tokens, so it's an important debate. And then, of course, Keith, and you and I have talked about this a lot as well, there's the Carlota Perez perspective. Paul Kudrowski writes about it this week. He argues that the AI capex isn't a bubble because of Carlota Perez's what he calls her technological surge cycle, in which every great new technology, industrial or otherwise, or the internet, requires a kind of misinvestment. The booms and busts are built into these cycles, and there's certainly some truth to that, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened with the telecom networks during the first internet bubble, and it happened again with mobile, that you overbuild uh, because there's competition. And the essence of competition is overbuilding. That's why theoretically these people think a central planning is a better solution than capitalism, because you can build according to need. Whereas with capitalism, if you've got AT&T and T-Mobile and the others, they all have to build to be able to win a very large part of the market. So you get overbuilding, and that's true in data centers. It's true in energy. Everything in capitalism, it's the nature of capitalism to overbuild
and exaggerate. You made a good point. One of your editorial this week is good in terms of describing what's happening. You say industrial policy by private contract is here, and it's wearing an OpenAI hoodie. But I wonder whether the state is also implicitly involved. Sam Altman has spent a lot of time recently schmoozing with Trump, for Trump and his MAGA movement. I think OpenAI is essential both in driving the US economy and in competing with China. So I wonder whether it's that simple, whether it really is industrial policy by private contract, i.e. OpenAI. There's this kind of implicit coalition now between this dominant AI company, OpenAI, which, as you know, maybe not, controls 88% of the market at the moment, and the industrial policy of a more assertive state that Donald Trump is running.
Yeah, I mean, the state clearly isn't paying for anything, but the state is.
And that's Trump's model. His genius is never pay for anything and put your names and slap your name on it.
He's putting people together and getting them to spend with each other, and the state does benefit through taxation ultimately if profits are made, and ownership. He's taking a piece of certain projects for the government. So there is a kind of a state capitalism element emerging, which is a lot less efficient than the Chinese top-down model where they have 5-year plans, but it's more efficient than pure competition.
Yeah, and I wonder, we're always fighting the last battle. People are predicting a dot-com bust or a Wall Street crash. But my sense of a possible scenario is if indeed Sam's chutzpah, his remarkable play to control this entire AI economy by creating some sort of circular economy, if it does crash, the state will be forced to step in and support OpenAI, whether it's a Trump president or a future Republican or Democrat. I don't think any future American administration can afford to have OpenAI crashing dramatically.
Yeah, I think the scenario of a crash is not very realistic, because the way it works in practice, these are not banks. They have a lot of money on their balance sheet, and the winners have more money than everyone else. The winners currently are NVIDIA and OpenAI, and so what happens when a bubble bursts is that the winners are fine because they can turn off marketing spend and infrastructure spend and benefit from huge revenues. It's everybody else that loses.
Which is always the case. I mean, The Economist had a good piece this week. I don't think you don't include The Economist in your summaries.
You have to have a sub, so it's hard for me to give it to my readers.
But The Economist ran a very good piece, and I would suggest for our viewers and listeners to subscribe to The Economist. I think it's an excellent publication. But they ran a test. They said, what if OpenAI went belly up? So they went through the numbers, and it's an interesting idea. I mean, you talk about banks. One of America's most prominent bankers gave an interview this week fearing a crash, an AI-driven crash. So maybe even the bankers don't get it.
Yeah, well, ultimately, it's simple. It comes down to the strength of your balance sheet, which is another way of saying the strength of your bank account. And all of this money, the winners are where the money ends up flowing. And in the case of revenue, that's NVIDIA and OpenAI. in the case of contracts, well, there's other people signing contracts, but that's not the same as revenue. So I think what you're going to see is smart investors and larger funds, which is a trend, by the way, are going to be owning the winners, and normal people are going to be not owning the winners.
So that, yeah, and it doesn't surprise me. You've always been more hopeful about the democratic kind of investment. So it's probably not surprising you went to an Andreessen Horowitz Open Day this week. They're promoting this. They would, wouldn't they? I mean, they and some of the other enormously powerful investors are on the hook here, but they're also, this would be their biggest win, wouldn't it? I mean, the investors in OpenAI, what kind of win would result?
Well, yeah, it's kind of easy to understand the economics. So this week, 58 companies were launched. Andreessen had put into each one $1 million. So that's $58 million. I don't know what their ownership is for that, but let's ignore that for a minute. What Andreessen then does is it writes bigger checks later as the winners emerge out of those 58, and it writes off the $1 million loss for all the others. So most of Andreessen's money, which is now in the double-digit billions, is doubling down on winners, and the later the stage, the bigger the check. So at $500 million, you could put, even 50 billion into OpenAI, and that 50 billion theoretically could turn into a 20x investment.
Yeah. So in all this play, Keith, and you do a lot of thinking on this, will OpenAI, or is OpenAI already too big to go public? Can they somehow?
Yeah.
Do they represent a different kind of company that is private but too big to go public? What would happen? I mean, we're not going to have another Netscape IPO with OpenAI, are we?
Well, look, if we put ourselves on the command deck of OpenAI, we're not incented to go public as long as we're spending money to grow.
Right, and they don't need the cash. You go public to raise cash.
Yes, and as long as you can raise capital while being private, as Stripe has shown, actually the right thing to do is to keep doing that, because public markets punish losses, whereas private markets reward growth. They don't see losses as losses, they see it as growth. And so that's a chalk and cheese. So going public is certainly, the lion's share of all the money on the planet comes through public markets. So there's a lot more money in public markets, but it's a lot harder for a company to be public through its growth stage. So if I'm Altman, I'm only going public when I'm cash flow positive. Which
we don't need to go public. I mean, the market is almost smaller than you.
You don't need to go public at this stage. That's true, because you can raise.
It's not. But I think we're talking about different kind of categories. That they're revolutionizing the idea of private and public companies.
Well, going back to the how do you fund this, the ultimate answer is to be public, because there's much more money in public markets by a large factor than even in all the private markets put together, including all the Saudis and all that money.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's about how do you fund it, and as long as private markets haven't dried up, there's no reason to go public.
Yeah, you had another interesting piece from Andreessen Horowitz on the successor to postmodernism. And I don't want to talk about postmodernism, but I do want to talk about this essay suggesting that we live in what Alex Danko from Andreessen Horowitz describes as a speculative age, that popular society is now suddenly and decisively, in cultural terms at least, moving towards speculation. I wonder whether this AI narrative, which I think is the central tech, political, economic narrative of our age, whether it's rooted in this bizarre speculative obsession that many of us have, that goes from talking about OpenAI to the gambling craze that young people now are involved with. Talk a little bit about this essay, Keith. Let's not talk about postmodernism.
Yeah.
I always think that's a term that people just use to define whatever they don't like. But this idea of a speculative culture, I think Danko is onto something.
Yeah, I think you would add the word to speculative. You'd add short-termist.
Right.
Basically, the world is becoming much more short-termist. We were talking off air about our children doing lots of gambling, as it's now become possible in the States to gamble, at least in some of the states in the US. And that speculation culture is short-term individualism, let's call it. I'm not convinced it's a new era. I think it's a continuation of the old, but as you said, let's not get into that. But it is definitely true. And this week, Polymarket was valued, and Polymarket is gambling on historical outcomes, like who's going to win the next election would be an example. And people put money on both sides of the bet. And you get the wisdom of crowds. Basically, it turns out that most of the time, the majority of the money is right, more than experts, actually. So you've got this kind of wisdom of the crowd, speculative economy leading to prediction markets, which tend to be right, interestingly. And
right, it's interesting. In the dot-com boom, it was cab drivers buying Yahoo stock and AOL stock that drove the economy. Now the cab drivers and the kids can't buy OpenAI stock because it's not available. So they're sort of gambling in other ways. Danko made a really interesting point. He said, how early or late you are to something is now an essential component of your relationship to that thing. I think that's quite a profound observation, that we are thinking more always in these temporal terms. It certainly defines social media.
Yeah, like, you know, an example would be, did you get a Sora 2 invite? And are you using it? And the answer mostly is no and no. But if the answer is yes and yes, somehow your status inherits some glow from the fact that you were early in Sora 2. And your ego, you know, manifests that. And so it's short-termist, it's individualistic, and it's speculative, which none of which are good.
Yeah, but it's defining the culture. Danko talks about these things called weights, which he says are increasingly going to become dominant. I'm quoting him, but the real party started when LLMs became a product in their own right, and suddenly this nebulous thing called weights became the most sought after asset in the world. What are weights? What does he mean by that? And how does this all connect with our AI age and this speculative age?
Well, weights are a technical attribute of an LLM training, an outcome. At the end of training an LLM, you've played with various variables inside the LLM that makes it perform better, and those are known as weights. And open source models publish their weights. It's a function of a vector database and a training set, which is all statistics. So weights are numbers that emphasize certain paths, if you will, versus other paths in answering.
Right. So AI becomes our tool in defining what is more or less likely. It becomes the currency, if you like, of this speculative age. One of the other pieces you connect with is a more old-fashioned interpretation of AI, Reviving the Technocratic Dream by your friend Norman Lewis, which suggests that AI can sort of determine what is real and what it isn't. But it seems as if AI is much more surreal than that in terms of speculation.
Well, what Norman's writing about, the core of what he's writing about, I agree with him. He's making the point that we collectively have lost faith in institutions, whether it's governments, the Supreme Court, you name it, the church. There's a trend towards institutions being considered in very low regard. And he makes the point that the flocking towards AI is another abandonment of human institutions, that it represents faith in something other than human institutions. And there's some truth in that. In the process of doing that, he introduces the idea that there's some kind of technocratic dream at play here, which is more of a top-down conspiratorial kind of reading, which I don't think is true. I think that's wrong. And I don't think there are any such thing as technocrats anymore. Interestingly, Chowdhury, in the second part of the title, says we can't trust big tech, which is kind of crossing over into this Norman Lewis.
Yeah, although to be fair, that was my
you added that
subtitle. I gave a speech last week about trusting big tech with our agentic future, so I put those words into his mouth. Although he is skeptical on trusting big tech.
My question to both of them would be, you know, given that this is going to happen and it's probably a good thing, net, who can you trust? I mean, if not big tech, then who? Because big tech has the money. And
well, that's the point about AI. I mean, I think Lewis's point is that in theory, AI should end trust. We turn the entire world into data, and it crunches that data and determines what should or shouldn't happen, what state policy should or shouldn't be. So that's the technocratic dream. But the reality, as Danko suggests, is that we're using this technology to forecast the future. We're not using it in a kind of collective way. We're using it to promote, if not our own interests, our own vision of the future, which is very different. Well, I mean, Danko talks about AI, this speculative moment being a successor to postmodernism, but actually, in a weird way, it's just an exaggerated form of postmodernism.
That's what I think. I think it's postmodernism taken to an extreme, and which are the characteristics of it are highly individualistic, highly short term,
and subjective.
And the speculative bit's new, but not that new. I mean, there's always been speculation. Whenever there's a past, a present, and a future, humans will speculate on what it is in the present that represents the future.
Well, let's end with your post of the week. It's a letter that Barry Weiss, who runs or had run
the Free Press.
They were acquired by CBS News for $150 million last week or the week before, and she's become head of CBS News. You have an interesting page on media, Keith, on the developments, both the Barry Weiss development and the other implications of AI with Hollywood. Do you think the Barry Weiss thing is a big deal? It's kind of weird in a way. I knew this was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to be CBS. It was obvious that someone would buy her.
Yeah, I mean, my way of thinking about it probably wouldn't be everybody's cup of tea, but the way I think about it is Barry Weiss is old media, and she effectively was squeezed out of her old job, leveraged
at the New York Times, right?
Times. She leveraged Substack to build a new brand, and now she's gone home. In this case, to CBS on a fast track. She
hasn't gone to daddy. She's come home.
She's come home, and that fast track from the New York Times to the head of CBS, literally the top person.
Well, she wasn't the head of New York. I mean, she was just an opinion writer.
She was just an opinion writer. So she's completely accelerated her career back to big media, let's call it. And I suspect it's of no long-term consequence, but in the short term, it's quite a big story.
Yeah, I agree. And when you look at her, your post of the week listed her 10 points. She talks about journalism that is fearless and factual. I mean, she could have used OpenAI to come up with that kind of garbage. I mean, there's nothing original in it, is there?
I don't think so.
I mean, she's just against, I mean, I always thought the New York Times would buy her. I don't know why they didn't, because I think the New York Times is increasingly archaic, and it would really have shaken them up.
Yeah, but they'd have to abandon a lot of shibboleths in order.
Well, it would be healthy for them. I guess they considered it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a good acquisition from CBS? Does it make any sense, or is it just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic?
I find it hard to think it's a good thing because, you know, when you think about mainstream media news, in my kind of ranking is roughly CNN, MSNBC, Fox, then maybe NBC itself. CBS is pretty low down, and I don't think this is going to change that.
Yeah, and one of the other pieces you have is from Neiman Lab suggesting that Barry Weiss's CBS News and MSNBC, they're comparing and contrasting. But you're suggesting, Neiman says they're fascinatingly different. You're suggesting they're kind of the same.
I think it depends at the level at which you're thinking. MSNBC is clearly more partisan, and CBS is outlining an agenda to be neutral, if you will, a bit more like the old CNN. And we'll see how it plays out. I mean, Paramount, which owns CBS, has a new owner, the son of Larry
David Ellison, yeah. And so a lot of people are speculating on this connection between David Ellison and Larry Ellison. I mean,
and they do have a lot of money, so that maybe we're failing to see the future here, and our speculation is wrong. Maybe CBS will rise like some kind of a beacon, but it's hard to believe in that because the brand is so tarnished.
Yeah, and Barry Weiss is not as objective as she claims, is she? I mean, she has certain areas, particularly when it comes to Middle Eastern politics, where she's clearly, I mean, that's why she got bullied at the New York Times, or she claims she was bullied at the New York Times because of her views on woke politics and on Israel. So I tend to agree. Finally, you talked about these single companies like Google making the world a better place. Cory Doctorow certainly wouldn't agree. He came up with the term "enshittification," which caught on. It's a brilliant word. He has a new book out about it. Is he right, Keith, that the internet has become enshittified, if there's such a word? The services, the products. Yeah. I mean, I think he was someone, say, for example, we began talking about Google. The original Google search engine was very good. Now it's less good. It's hard to trust. You never quite know whether the links are supported by advertising or other words. Does Doctorow's argument have a point? And might it be a warning to our friend Sam Altman about enshittifying, shall we say, AI?
Well, firstly, yes, he's right. And he's talking about the internet, but what he really means is the web. And it's important to distinguish. The internet is the pipes and protocols. The web is one of the protocols that content tends to live in. So the web and many apps, especially news apps and social media apps, he's completely right. But interestingly, it doesn't travel into AI. OpenAI for the last 3 weeks have been using Pulse, which is their daily proactive tech that gives you things to think about ahead of your day.
Yeah, speaking of agentic futures, it's a little chilling, but that's another story.
But the quality of it is really good. I mean, my productivity in my day job at SignalRank has gone through the roof.
This isn't your day job, Keith, and that was the week?
No, that's my week job. Once a week. We summarize once a week.
And I hope it's W-E-E-K rather than W-E-A-K.
Exactly. But I think there's a good chance that enshittification gets orphaned on the web and doesn't travel through to AI.
So you are still an optimist. You think that AI and Sam Altman are going to make the world a better place? And I'm not bringing up any poor kids in East Palo Alto. That's another story.
Yeah, and well, I don't have an unambiguous hero mentality there, because it begs a lot of questions about if untold wealth is created down this path, how do we all benefit from it is a question.
Yeah, to put it mildly, given that all the wealth will be controlled by Andreessen Horowitz, Sam Altman, and one or two other people. But we will see. This story is only just beginning. Good conversation, Keith. I can't believe how much we agree. Fortunately, we avoided talking about both humanity and poor children in East Palo Alto. We'll talk again next week. Have a great week, and we'll talk tech summary next weekend. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Hey everyone, come to Daddy.
Sam, hi, we're here. OpenAI is the best.
There's room for all of you. Let's make something amazing.
Can't wait to build with you, Sam. We love what you're doing here.
Thanks for showing up. OpenAI OpenAI loves your attention, and we plan to earn it. Stick around. We've got a lot to share.